Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
I'm DJ Ross. I'm in Mountain View, California.
On every episode of Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week we're playing Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom and Conscript.
Aha. Mm-hmm. Two of the fall's most hotly anticipated games.
Yes. Yeah? I mean, I would vouch for Zelda. I don't know if I know what Conscript is.
You're not big on Conscript? All right, well, I'll fill you in when we get to it.
Sorry. I'm not... it's difficult to keep up with games. There's so many games.
That's true. There are a lot of games.
At some point, I just admitted defeat. I don't know. I can't retain it all.
Did you know they're up to Black Ops 6?
No. God, really?
No?
That's insane.
It's like...
I
feel like it shouldn't be
surprising.
One
of those once. A long time ago. It had to be like one or two.
Yeah, I played a couple of them, I think. I played the first one that had Ed Harris in it. And then one of the,
sounds right.
The futuristic ones, I think. They got real weird with the timeline. I stopped trying to follow those as well.
And there was a Modern Warfare, and then later on there was another Modern Warfare.
Oh yeah, there are multiple. I think they did all three of them again, so it's just real confusing now.
But
probably 10 years later there will be another Modern Warfare reboot.
Yes, yeah. Because I mean that's the thing about the word modern. It is always up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they must have been real happy once they stumbled on that. We'll just call it Modern Warfare, and it'll just be whatever happens to be modern at the time. Super easy.
Yeah, it'll be that thing all the time. Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Meanwhile, Battlefield over in the Battlefield offices, it's like, Battlefield 1? Battlefield 5? That's the one about World War II. I feel like they really kind of got off track with the naming scheme.
Yeah. Whoever came up with that is the same person who is naming Xboxes at this point.
Yeah. You played Battlefield 1 for your Xbox One?
just call it 1. Just call everything 1. Everything is the first one.
Yeah. God, yep. What's the next Xbox going to be called? Can't wait.
Xbox Uno.
Ooh. All right, make it bilingual. That'll be exciting.
just the word one, but in other languages. Yeah.
I still can't believe Xbox One. Truly, nobody saw it coming. So props to them for that.
Yeah.
It was just a half decade of hilarity.
Will there be another Xbox? Is that a topic for this episode? No, maybe not.
No, we don't have time to get into that. There'll probably be another one, right?
I don't know. I mean, they seem to be selling off chunks of that company in bits and pieces over the years. I don't know. They were scooping up studios for a long time, and then they just started closing them all. And it's a bleak time to be a video game developer.
Yes, well, that is this also just like Modern Warfare, a
right,
constant,
yeah. To say the least.
But
anyway, Zelda and Conscript.
What's less
come
bleak?
To the right place.
Yeah, Conscript is a little bleak. Zelda less so.
Less, but has bleakness.
Does it? Well, yeah. I mean, it has about the same amount of bleakness as there always is in Zelda game, right?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know. I'm like not super far into it, so maybe it just gets uncharacteristically bleak.
Have you been to the still world yet?
The still? Did I? Kind of. I'll admit, I'm not really keeping up with all the terms that they're throwing at me.
All right, we'll come back to this.
It's like sometimes they're like little frozen people. Sometimes there's like
yes, yeah. Okay, there's that.
Okay, yeah. I didn't find that like especially bleak though.
With a horrified look on their face, just sort of suspended and frozen in the air.
Yeah, but they're like little like figurines. That's not
little chibis.
Like, how horrifying can that get?
Look at that frozen person. He looks horrified and cute.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine the most horrifying expression you could have on one of those little like Weeble figurines. It's like not that scary.
All shiny and plastic.
Yes, yeah. It's like, he looks terrified, but still very collectible somehow.
Yeah. Make it an amiibo.
Yeah. Did they make an amiibo in this style? The little Link's Awakening Link? They must have, right?
Probably. I'm sure that's out there somewhere.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know this is amiibo compatible, and you can use the amiibo from all of the other Zelda games and re-releases they have put out, but I'm not sure if they're... Yeah, there's got to be a Link's Awakening one out there
There has to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably costs like $1,000 on eBay at this point.
Yeah. My favorite one is the Zelda and Link from Wind Waker, the Toon Link.
Yeah, I got that guy.
And Toon Zelda. Yeah, those are really good. Yeah, I haven't bought an amiibo in quite a long time.
No, I think that was my last one. Or when did the Boo amiibo come out? I'm just kind of glancing over at my shelf. Like, where did these things come from? I'm surprised there even was a Boo amiibo. Like, why is that? Why does that exist? He wasn't in a game.
Can you be Boo on Smash?
No.
Really?
No. Or I would just be a Boo main.
Just Boo all the time, yeah.
Yeah. There was a Piranha Plant amiibo. I mean, because, yeah, every Smash character got one. Why don't I have that one? All these questions.
Yeah. There's I thought of you recently. There is a in your love for Boo. There's a there's a tattoo parlor here in Harrisburg called the Odd Parlor.
Yeah.
Cool little shop a couple blocks away from me. And they are doing a tattoo flash deal for Halloween.
Oh, good.
For like $31. You can pick from a bunch of pages of little micro flash, and they're all cool little creepy things. A little Jack Skellington or, a little skeleton dog and things like that you can get. And one of them is Boo.
Oh, very good.
And I was like, oh, that's a cool Halloween tattoo. DJ.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that's what was keeping me from getting a tattoo, is it wasn't on sale.
You couldn't figure out what the right thing was, and the price just wasn't right for you. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I would ever get a tattoo.
No, not ever. Not a thing ever.
No, I mean, it would have to be so good. I probably just couldn't think of something that was that good. Like that tattoo worthy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair.
Boo might be in the top 10. I don't know. I don't know if I would get like a video game character.
Yeah. I thought for a long time, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, like I'll just get like a bunch of like bands tattooed, like things inspired by bands or album covers. And
like band names?
You get band names or like cool artwork from band, imagery and the spiral from the Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails was one of the things.
Just like a big picture of Tom York's face.
Or like a cool thing from a Radiohead record cover or something like that. And, yeah. But then you get like 20 years later and you're like, oh, I dodged a bullet because that band's not good anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh.
Yeah.
That could go very badly depending on which band.
Somebody out there got a Coldplay tattoo once upon a time thinking it was super cool. And then,
Yeah. Well, I feel like Coldplay, you could do a lot worse. You could, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sure. No doubt.
But yeah,
I don't mean the band. I don't mean the band. No doubt. I mean, yes, undoubtedly, who arguably were a pretty good and pretty consistent band, but undoubtedly you could do worse.
Yeah, no doubt.
But yeah, so yeah, the permanence of the tattoo thing is always hard for me.
Yeah,
because you really have to commit to that.
So yeah, that's the thing. It's like, who knows what I've been into 20 years from now?
Right.
So it's got to be something that's just like timeless, like Modern Warfare. Maybe I should get like Captain Price or something. My favorite assault tattoo. Rifle or whatever. No, that's terrible.
Somebody has to have Call of Duty tattoos, right?
Oh, you think? Yeah, I'm sure there's at least one Call of Duty tattoo out there.
Call of Duty tattoo.
Somebody's just got Captain Price's gross facial hair just tattooed on their face.
Oh, there's tons of them. I just Googled and I have a whole page full of Call of Duty tattoos.
Should come as a surprise to absolutely no one.
Look at this guy sitting in his car showing off his tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to close this window. No judgment. If Call of Duty is your thing, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of things in the world. If that is your thing, more power to you. I don't want to yuck somebody else's yum.
I'm trying to think of what Call of Duty tattoo I would get now. I don't know. I was like, how you can make the little profile card or whatever? I don't know if they still do this. They probably do. Like whenever you kill somebody, it pops up a little icon in your little like call sign or tagline or whatever, and it's got the marijuana leaves in the background if that's what you select. But in Modern Warfare 2, I had like a little like a little Burger King icon, because there was like a fake Burger King in that game. And I was like, that's it. That's the one. Whenever I kill somebody, I want it to show a little fake hamburger on their screen. And that's all I want. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's my tattoo. Little
I think
Burger
you
King.
nailed it. Yeah, you stumbled upon it.
Burger Town, I believe.
Does that carry over from game to game? Is that like the Pokédex where it's just eternal?
It should. I don't think it does, but it definitely should.
Oh, somebody should have thought of that. I can't be the first person to think of it.
Yeah, you'd be running into people with all these like vintage Call of Duty emblems or whatever. Be like, oh yeah, I've been playing this since you were in diapers.
All right, so I'll mark it down here in my notes. No Boo tattoo for DJ. He's above it.
Maybe Boo tattoo. Yeah, so
maybe
Boo on one shoulder and then Burger Town the other one.
There you go. I get that Burger Town tattoo. We have some show business we need to get out of the way.
Yeah, we do.
We buried it like way into the show last week, and I don't know how many people actually got that far, but hopefully you all did. But it's closer to the front of the show. We want to do a stream announcement, and we want to remind you about a special event coming up.
Yes.
So next Monday, October 14th, as we get kind of into the heart of spooky season, we will be streaming yet another kind of spooky game. This one is called Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Yes.
Yeah. So Monday, October 14th, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Tune your Twitch machine to twitch.tv/VGHangover. This is a cool, creepy, kind of like puzzle solving, exploring a haunted hotel. It gets kind of dark and kind of surreal. It's all in black and white, except for like certain things are in red. It is the folks who did Sayonara Wild Hearts a few years ago. It looks and plays nothing like that game. Yep. So that is a weird point of reference, but yeah, it's their new game, came out a little earlier this year. It's kind of creepy and surreal. And DJ, it's only single player, but DJ and I are going to put our combined wisdom into it and try to solve some puzzles and explore creepy hotels.
Yeah, I heard this is extremely good. I did not know that it was also creepy, or spooky anyway, but I was like, oh, okay, that's bonus. So we're going to check it out. It should be good.
Yeah, the big review I looked at says creepy vibes and the puzzles become increasingly more dangerous and surreal.
Yeah, I heard the puzzles get very, like, intense. Not in terms of, like, I don't know, intensely spooky or anything, but, like, there are some, like, serious puzzles in it.
All right.
So.
Well, it may take two of us then.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I will make sure I eat my Wheaties that day.
That should be good. Yeah.
Yeah, that should be fun. So if you are in the mood for something kind of spooky and puzzle solvy, you know what I mean? Monday, October 14th is coming Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. We'd love you to join us.
Yeah.
And then the aforementioned special event is Extra Life 2024, our 11th year participating. Yeah.
So many years.
DJ, tell the people, what is Extra Life if you've never heard of that before?
Oh, my turn. Extra Life is an annual... God, what is it? There's so many things that Extra Life is. It's an annual 24-hour marathon for charity to raise money for children's hospitals.
Right. And
usually what people do for this is they play video games for 24 hours. And that's what we're going to do. We've been doing it for 11 years or 10 years. And like you said, this will be our 11th go. And it's always a lot of fun. But we'll be streaming all day on Saturday, November 2nd. Yes, Saturday, November 2nd.
You got it.
All sorts of crazy stuff on the stream. Randy and I will be tagging in and out, playing all manner of things. I don't know how much how much detail we have on the actual list of games, although I have some idea of what I'm going to be playing. There'll probably be some Slay the Spire. We're going to try the daily challenge this year.
Oh, hell yeah.
Usually later in the evening, there's like a few hours where I play spooky games. The last few years, it's been quite spooky, actually. Been playing those Chilla's art games. The ones on the slate for this year look like they may be the most terrifying ones to date. So we'll see how that goes. For my retro game, man, this sort of caught me off guard. I didn't realize that this is something I wanted to play, but as soon as I realized, I was like, oh, yeah, I should play that. I'm going to be playing Turok Dinosaur Hunter for N64. Never played it. Not supposed to be especially good, from what I hear. So we'll see how it holds up 20 years later. 25 years later.
Cool. Yeah, I'm still sort of like loosely assembling my list. We generally like to play with our Discord folks, the awesome people that are in the VGH Discord community. So we'll work on assembling what game that will be for this year, and get some times out there for folks. You can go to our Discord and pick up more information there. Just go to VGHangover.com for an invite to the Discord.
Yeah. You
What
can
else?
also
We
go
want
to
play
VGHangover.com/extra life for the full schedule as it sort of materializes.
Yeah.
And to get a donation link, or to get a link to our Extra Life team, where you can then put in a donation if you are feeling generous.
Right. Yeah, that's the other part of this, is we do at some point have to ask you for money. You certainly don't have to give it, although it would be nice if you would. We're doing this to raise money for hospitals all over the place. There's one in my community. There's one in DJ's community. We love taking a day to support them every winter.
Yeah. And, don't feel pressured to donate. We always just like seeing people show up on the stream and cheer us on in the chat. So that's also fun if you just want to make an appearance on Saturday.
Totally. Yeah. Everything is expensive. Life is hard.
Yes.
we get it. Absolutely. If a donation just isn't possible for you, we'll take your moral support, your enthusiasm, your infectious positivity. That absolutely has a value, and we'd love to tap into that on game day as well.
Yeah. Anyway, that's Saturday, cool. November 2nd.
Yeah. More to come, but definitely getting that on your radar so you can save the date.
Yeah. Looking good. Oh man, that's going to sneak up really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. It's usually within a couple of days of Halloween, and I always feel like I've got a little breathing room to like get it together, but it is not that far away right now.
Yeah. Oh, Halloween's coming up too. Spooky month. Ooh.
So some games.
Yeah. What kind of bleak, spooky games have you been playing?
None really. I've been watching some scary movies, as one is wont to do around this time of year. So I've been doing a little.
Been watching some scary movies too, which is it's not really my thing usually. But for the last few years, I'm just like, whatever. It's spooky month. I'm gonna watch some spooky movies. So
nice.
But in typical fashion, I have just been watching like the worst sort of classic horror stuff. Like a couple years ago, I started with Halloween, like the original Halloween 1 and 2.
Oh yeah,
which I really enjoyed, like the first one, but it's basically a comedy at this point.
Yeah.
And then this year, I forget what I watched last year, but this year, I have watched all of the original Friday the 13th movies, and when I say all of them, I mean like 4, because there was like sort of a point where it cuts off, and I was just like, man, there's so many of these. I can't watch all of them, but I want to at least like get the idea of what's going on. So I think I've watched 3 or 4 of them. I think 4.
Yeah. I mean, at some point in my life, I have seen all of those, and there are a lot of them. I think there's 13 or 14 of them, right?
I watched the most recent one I watched was the final chapter, which is the 4th one, I think.
I don't know.
And I was like, okay, it says final in the title, so this seems like a good place to stop. So that's it. That's good for me.
This is where I exit. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. You get credit for that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, all those 80s slasher movies are like in my head somewhere. Like I certainly have not seen any of them recently.
Yeah.
And inevitably they all got sort of remade and spun into sequels or TV series or something like that. There's a Chucky series on Sci-Fi now, and
why?
The Child's Play movies were always like some special version of garbage. And the Halloween movies have been like remade and rebooted so many times. There was the Rob Zombie ones, and there's the I forget the other director who did it, but like nobody seems to sort of like get it right. And yeah, there is something just sort of like stupid about those 80s ones that is just kind of fun to like, hang out with for a little while.
Yeah. Man, the Halloween timeline is crazy. There's just like so many reboots and like time loops, or not really time loops, but like this one's no longer canon. Oh, this one is actually a direct sequel to this other one that people forgot about or whatever. But I was like, oh, I didn't realize there was this much going on.
Yeah, somebody is spending a lot of time, much like Zelda, thinking about the Halloween timeline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was like, it's probably the same people who are managing the Zelda timeline.
Just as convoluted, yeah. No, I've been trying to keep up with. It has been a really good year for horror movies, like cinema and streaming. So, trying to keep up with some of that stuff this year has been exciting. We just recently watched Strange Darlings, which was really good. As a couple who has a one night stand and wake up in the morning suspecting the other one is a serial killer.
Ooh.
And it's told out of sequence, so it time hops back and forth throughout the course of the story. So you're initially cool. Like quite kind of disjointed. It's not a slasher movie by any stretch, but it gets occasionally really violent. And it's really well done and has a pretty good sense of humor for something that's supposed to be kind of terrifying.
And one of the scenes is one of them just like wearing a hockey mask and there's no explanation.
Just completely out of context without further reference. That was really good. Late Night with the Devil was really good. Have you heard of that?
No. If it didn't come out in the 80s, then no, it's not on my list.
That's probably my favorite movie of the year thus far. It's streaming. It's on Shudder, definitely. Again? Late Night with the Devil.
Okay.
It is a late 70s late night TV talk show host, and he decides he's going to do some big like Halloween night extravaganza where he invites somebody on his show in an attempt to like get good ratings and save his like failing late night talk show, who's going to do a seance. And everything goes sideways. And it is kind of told in real time over the course of a 1 hour TV episode.
That's cool.
And you get a little kind of behind the scenes and interstitials and things that happen during commercials and stuff like that. But it literally is just like the worst nightmare you can possibly imagine while also trying to like save face and host a TV show. But it's really, really well done. It's ultra low budget, but just hysterical and really well assembled. And it also gets quite gory sometimes. Yeah. So I would recommend. That's a good one.
I think that's something I like about the older horror movies is that they just like, they're not really gory at all. So sometimes somebody gets stabbed and it's like, this little like incredibly fake looking trickle of blood kind of like, oh my God. Oh, the shock. Yeah. But I'm just like, it's not really something I'm into. So it's like, okay, this is a level that I can handle. And again, they're just comedies at this point. Just like, right. What kind of ridiculous way is Jason gonna murder somebody next? It's like, yeah, okay. I didn't realize that you could enjoy them on this level. But I have like very little interest in watching like the more recent like Friday the 13th remakes or reboots or whatever they are, because I just imagine that's not how they would go necessarily.
I think there's something that I sort of like appreciate about sort of like the grunginess of those old movies. Like they're definitely like shoestring budgets, not the best actors, certainly not the best dialogue. No. Everything feels just kind of skeevy and dirty. And like, I like that. Like, I think that's what sort of Rob Zombie, like his movies are not great, but that's what he gets about making movies, is particularly those kinds of movies, is that everybody in that is just like the worst person. No redeeming qualities whatsoever. But I think you kind of want that in like a skeevy 70s inspired like slasher movie.
I don't know if I really got that from a lot of the characters in those movies, or at least Friday the 13th.
No.
I mean, some of them, sure, they're just like, college kids. They're dumb.
Yeah. I would think of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre and things like that are just kind of like scumbag movies.
Oh, yes, I haven't made it that one yet.
Yeah. I mean that in the nicest way.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying.
It's an aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah. I like the old ones though, because it just feels like they like didn't really know how to make movies yet, or totally. It was just less formalized than going to a movie today, when there's just like budgets are enormous and there's a certain way you shoot things, and it felt like they were still figuring it out, which was kind of fun.
Well, I mean, that's John Carpenter's whole thing. Like all of his early movies and some of his later movies we're out of money, we have to do something. And him just sort of like throwing shit together. That's how he ended up writing the soundtrack for all of his movies initially, is that there was no money left over to hire a musician. So he just figured it out.
Yeah.
So I respect that. That's what artists do.
Yeah. Kind of fun. It was crappy.
Yeah. There's a really cool movie streaming on Shudder, and this will be my last last recommendation, called In a Violent Nature. Have you heard of that one?
No. Did it come out in the 80s?
It did not. It came out this year.
Yeah. Well.
It is a slasher movie from the point of view of the slasher. Rather than being the campers or the sexy teens on a weekend getaway, it's the bumbling reanimated corpse stumbling through the woods looking for somebody to kill. And it's kind of an art movie, but it's also like a Friday the 13th movie. So that is really well done. It does require a little more patience. It's kind of low on dialogue. It's kind of low on character, but an interesting experiment in how to tell a slasher movie from a different perspective.
Most of it is just the killer stumbling around in the dark for 45 minutes.
Kinda. Yeah, just looking for somebody to cleave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is called In a Violent Nature. That is also streaming on Shudder, so would recommend.
I don't know. It sounds very high concept.
Yeah, it's true. I like all kinds of scary movies. More to come. There's still more others I want to see. I want to see The Substance.
The Substance.
Sounds really,
yeah.
Well, with Demi Moore.
I think I was going to say Friday the 13th. I just watched all of those. Probably Nightmare on Elm Street is next for me.
Oh, good choice. Yeah, those are good.
I feel like it's like Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare is like the Trinity. So
those messed me up as a kid. Like, I have distinct memories of losing sleep over Freddy Krueger. So
yeah, I think I feel like I'm probably going to vibe with those the least, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Well, cool. We should play a Friday the 13th game.
Are there good Friday the 13th games? All I know is there was the one on the NES, which was like
that's the only one I could think of. Yeah.
Didn't they make a recent one though, where it was like, I can't remember. No, they actually did make a game, right? But then they also put Jason there. He just like had a cameo in so many different games at this point. Probably get it mixed up. But there was definitely a Friday the 13th game.
Yes, I do remember that. I think we played the demo for it at some point, or they had a free play weekend or something. I remember us exploring that.
Yeah. But it's basically like, I don't know if it was as a result of watching these movies or just me trying to figure out what this game that everybody's talking about is. But I was reading a bunch about Until Dawn. Well, it's because they just did a remake or something, right? Or remaster. But that game, sounds incredible at this point because it's basically just Smash Brothers of big horror movie villains. But no, he was definitely in there. I think plays Jamie Lee Curtis or something like that. I don't know who they would have pulled from the Friday the 13th sort of like protagonists. I don't know if there really were any, but just a surprising cast in that game at this point.
I remember them doing kind of the many iterations of Jason and as like DLC and unlockables and stuff like that. You could do the different versions of the mask and flannel shirt and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's I'm not sure if there's any other like notable victims in the history of the Friday the 13th movies.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, at least you go back to the original Nightmare on Elm Street, and a very, very young Johnny Depp is in there.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Johnny Depp's in there.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, what's the guy's name? He was in Friday the 13th 4. He was George McFly.
Oh, Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover, yeah, he was in that. Being just like very Crispin Glovery, I guess. I don't think he's notable enough to put into Until Dawn, but that would be hysterical.
Nice. I mean, Crispin Glover is a weird, creepy dude in his own right. So,
yeah.
What was the movie with him and the rats? Ben? Is that what that was called?
Willard.
There you go.
Yeah.
Ben was the sequel. That was a good movie for, a killer rat movie. A guy who controls killer rats.
Yeah.
It was fine.
It was fine. Yeah.
I mean, I like Crispin Glover. I would watch him in just about anything.
Sure. You would buy the Crispin Glover DLC add-on to whatever game you were playing.
Hell yeah, absolutely. I watched
just like doesn't make any sense for him to be in the game. They just made the DLC anyway.
Yeah. So I watched 2.5 seasons of American Gods because Crispin Glover was in some of it.
It's all
The rest of it
big
was not
commitment to Crispin Glover.
great. I know what I like.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got here, but how do we get back to video games?
Well, you know what my favorite game with Crispin Glover downloadable content is The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom.
Hell yeah.
Really surprising. Just, I don't know why they keep putting Crispin Glover in stuff. It's the first time he's been in a Nintendo game, so that's even more surprising.
He plays Zelda in this, doesn't he?
Yeah, yes. It was weird because everybody was so excited to play as Zelda finally, and then you find out Crispin Glover's in it, and you're just like, oh, well, now I'm only going to play as him.
Right. So I also don't know how to get back from that, DJ, so thank you. The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom is the new Zelda game, and it is actually a Zelda game this time. Probably not lost in our audience.
In that you play as Zelda?
Correct, yes. For not the first time in game history, but but I think the second time. And the first one was one of those Philips CDI games from 100 years ago that nobody cares about.
Yeah. You could play as Zelda in Smash Brothers. People forget that that is a thing. I mean, it's not really a Zelda game, but
correct.
She has been a controllable character.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she was in Wind Waker too, but she was not the star of that game.
Oh, spoilers.
Oh, is that a spoiler? Sorry.
I don't know. Well, I don't remember even whether you played as her or not. Sure. I mean, it sounds plausible.
What's the statute of limitations on video game spoilers? But yeah, so she's the main character in this one, and you are in fact trying to, this is not a spoiler either, but cover your ears if you're sensitive to it, trying to rescue Link.
Yeah.
In a bit of role reversal. Something mysterious is happening to Hyrule, and she's trying to suss it out. The conceit here is that while she's not up for combat herself, except for sometimes when she is,
yes,
she has a wand that allows her to create echoes or copies of many of the things that she encounters in the environment. So rather than engaging in battle yourself, you can create echoes of some of the enemies that you encounter, and they work for you when you replicate them. They fight on your behalf. So a lot of it is you finding kind of the right thing that you've encountered from your playthrough, and replicating it and spawning it into the game and trying to solve a puzzle or to overcome an obstacle or to fight an enemy by way of replicating these echoes from earlier in the game.
Yeah, it's never it's never really how I pictured Zelda, with just like an army of minions. But that's essentially what ends up happening in a lot of the combat situations. Is you just summon a bunch of monsters.
Yeah. And
then it's like you have your army of bats or Octoroks or whatever. But it takes a little bit of getting used to, because my first instinct in a game that looks like this, that looks like a top-down Zelda game, is just like, I'm gonna smack it with my sword or whatever. And if you try and do that, it just summons a thing. Sometimes it's a monster, sometimes it's like a table. So you quickly have to learn how to avoid those sort of instincts.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the interesting puzzle within a puzzle, is that the things that you can summon are not always sort of immediately useful. It's not always, an Octorok who will fight on your behalf or something like that. It is occasionally, like you said, it's a table or it's a chair or it's a beds. Beds are very handy in this game.
Yep. Beds. Summon a lot of beds.
Yeah.
Very long.
And literally any enemy that you can encounter, you can ultimately replicate and respawn, which is kind of interesting in trying to sort of find the right application for some of their skill sets and abilities. The characters that catch things on fire are always super useful.
Yeah, those are good. I like those.
But you got to get the hell out of the way because you may set yourself on fire.
Yes.
But yeah, it has been fun kind of exploring. And as the collection of things you've replicated grows, the list gets longer and longer. And you do find that you sort of I settle into as a gamer a couple of like favorites that I end up deploying over and over again. But sometimes I find myself super stuck or not quite understanding how to proceed. And I'll go back through my my inventory of echoes and go, what if I tried this? What if I tried this other weird thing? Yeah. So it does kind of like capture the experimentation and like the physics and just the desire to kind of break the game or exploit the game that comes from the more modern Zelda games.
Yeah, that is quite interesting. I didn't really realize that is what it was going to feel like, but it really does like feel kind of freeform at times. Like you have this whole arsenal full of random objects, and it's just like I feel like I just need to build something. I need to build a contraption or like a structure out of these, which feels like basically what you're doing in Tears of the Kingdom, which is unexpected. Another game it reminds me of a lot is, do you remember Scribble Knots?
Oh, yeah, totally.
It was kind of a puzzle game, and the hook was you would summon objects by writing them. But like, just, you need to summon a ladder, so you write ladder, and it would manifest a ladder. And that was how the whole game worked, and it feels a lot like that to me. In that you have this, like, in several ways. One, in that you've got these, like, potentially limitless array of items you can use to solve these puzzles, and it's not always clear what you're supposed to use to solve it, or if there even is like an intended solution. But then the other way it reminds me of that is that you just have so many options, and they're all fairly similar, or like many of them are fairly similar. Like it doesn't make a whole lot of difference whether you summon a bed or like a crate. So I find myself just going like, yeah, well, if I need a platform, I'm just going to make another bed, because beds have worked out for like most of the time, even if it doesn't really make sense. That it's like, oh yeah, Zelda's magical power just summoning unlimited beds wherever she goes, just to to build platforms to stand on. But yeah, you do just have sort of like your go-to bench of like, I got a bed and I got the little guys who are on fire. And what was the other one I was using? I think it's like the one of the birds that dive bombs the other monsters.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah, the crows. The crows are great because they will dive bomb and attack other enemies. And anytime they do damage, they give off rupees. So rupees sort of fall out of the pockets of the people they're attacking, I guess is the lore. And you can go scoop up all their rupees. So you get extra money out of that, too.
Yeah, so I've got my three sort of go-to summons. And that works most of the time.
Definitely. But there are moments in this, particularly in like the dungeon crawling aspect of it, where I sort of feel like, well, I did a thing. I don't know if that was what the people who made this game intended for me to do to solve this puzzle, but I sort of brute forced my way through it by summoning the right number of crates and an Octorok or whatever to sort of solve my problem. So yeah, and then it is a very sort of dominant feeling through a lot of Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. Is sort of like, well, I don't know if that was the right way, but that was my way. Yeah, so I like that they've been able to sort of like condense that down into like a more kind of familiar Zelda package where it's kind of 2D and it looks a lot like kind of Link's Awakening or A Link Between Worlds and stuff like that. And in fact, there's been a lot of like map comparison between A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, and Echoes of Wisdom, basically, alluding that they've kind of updated the layout of those older games to house the new game into.
Yeah, that was also kind of funny because it does. I mean, like, I'm a huge fan of Link to the Past, so I immediately I can't resist comparing the maps together. But it's funny how similarly they end up being laid out. But it's just like, okay, I know the desert's always in the southwest. In A Link to the Past, I don't know if it was a specific desert or if it even had a name at this point, but in this one, of course, it is the Gerudo Desert, because that is just that has just become what every desert in Zelda games has been since like Ocarina of Time. And then I forget the swampy area is the Zora area, but I think that's always been a thing. But it's also funny just seeing how sort of like formalized Zelda has gotten.
Oh, since since Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's just like they have these sort of like more characterized versions of all these different areas. So now it's like, oh yes, of course it's the Gerudos live out in the desert, and it's always the Zoras live in Zora's domain or whatever it's called.
And I know the proper general direction to walk in to get there because I've played 100 other Zelda games. Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of fun. I appreciate that. I also like sort of seeing the Echoes of Wisdom character design through the filter of the previous games, of knowing what they, knowing what the Gerudo look like in Breath of the Wild, and then comparing their characters to the design and the aesthetic of Echoes of Wisdom, where everything looks kind of shiny and kind of plastic. It looks like everything is toys, essentially. And sort of how they've kind of manipulated the artwork from one game into the modern game. And thinking about kind of how many iterations of this stuff that we've been through with Zelda over the years, with Toon Link and, all that other fun stuff over the years.
Yeah. I really like that this is just sort of a new aesthetic that has emerged on top of, like, there was like Toon Link and sort of the Ocarina of Time sort of like semi-realistic style was. And now there's just like this like toy box looking Link and Zelda, which is just, I think, a fun take on the sort of 2D versions.
Yeah. I like it. I like that it looks like shiny little action figures. I think that's kind of cool. Yeah. We did have somebody in our Discord, I forget who. I was surprised they weren't playing the new Zelda, and their response was, "I don't like the artwork."
What?
And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I could see that would be kind of polarizing, but I don't know if that would be a reason that I would ever like skip a Zelda game.
Hey, you should have been around when they announced Wind Waker. That was a real sore spot for people.
Yeah, I was in love with the aesthetic of Wind Waker from the minute I saw it, so I never quite understood the people who were like not into it. Yeah. It's still my favorite version of Zelda.
Yeah. Probably mine as well.
Yeah. But I'm certainly not done with this thing by any stretch. I think I'm a little further than you. I like it. I'm having a really good time with it. I have found it quite addictive to play. It has reminded me just how much I missed like classic Legend of Zelda dungeons.
Yeah, that's the big thing to me is like, oh, it's just a Zelda game again. There are dungeons.
Yeah.
And there's not really, I mean, I don't know how much deeper the sort of like trappings go. I don't think I've recovered like, the dungeon treasure up to this point, but like, that's fine. It was just like, people were wondering if Tears of the Kingdom was going to have a little bit more of the classic structure, and it didn't really.
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, it was just like, oh yeah, I missed just going into a dungeon, and it's not one-to-one with the old Zelda games, but it definitely is like feels familiar, which is cool.
Yeah, well, I mean that sort of classic Legend of Zelda hook where like you get the cool weapon or toy or tool, and then the dungeon sort of relies on repeatedly using that in interesting ways is not really a factor in Echoes of Wisdom, because everything that you've encountered up to that point is a tool.
It would just seem kind of redundant if they gave you this one thing. Right.
Yeah. So instead you have this whole like collection of things that you've replicated and copied over the years, over the hours of game you've played before, that you can now use as kind of tools to unlock doors and get past enemies and fight bosses and stuff like that. So yeah, it is fun. It's definitely kind of its own thing, but it like feels evocative and reminds me of things that I've loved in the past from the Zelda series. So
yeah,
it's always a fine line with these kind of things to like explore and iterate and do something new without kind of losing the flavor and the thing that makes Legend of Zelda as a property appealing. It is not a job that I would wish upon myself. It's always got to be a real fine line to like stick to the Bible, but also like, challenge people and bring something kind of fun and new to the table. And this so far feels like it does. I have found myself very kind of addicted to it and looking for places to squeeze in like 10 minutes of gameplay here or there when I don't have a lot of time to do it right now.
Yeah. I've been enjoying it quite a bit as well. There's only one real complaint I have about it. Okay, wait. There's two complaints. One is that they just decided from Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom that the best way to organize any sort of inventory is to just have one giant list with everything in the game in it.
Yeah.
And so you spend so much time just scrolling through this list of every single thing you've ever copied, and it is horrible.
Yep. You are absolutely right. You're spot on. I was like, there's got to be a way to sort it. There's got to be a way to pick my favorites and to bind them to button. Nope, you can't do any of that.
Yeah, put them on a button. That's smart. Look at you.
Yeah. Yeah. It does have like most recently used. So I do find that sometimes if I'm going into an encounter, like I know like a boss is coming, I will put like, my top 3 or 4 favorite things at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Just so they're right there. But nope, there's no other way to do it really. And it just feels really dumb.
Yeah. Fortunately, like the game pauses as you're scrolling this huge list. So, you don't have to do it under time pressure or anything. But like, come on, guys, put more than 0 effort into figuring out how to design your game UI. Okay, but the thing that I was like, oh man, why is this like this? Is that there are occasions when you have to fight something, or, there are occasions where you don't have to, but maybe it would be nice if you could fight something directly. And it gives you this power called, what is it called? Sword fighter mode? Something to that effect?
Yep.
Which you just, you activate, and then you essentially just turn into Link, and you have all of his moves. And what an unbelievable cop-out that is. It's like, we've waited so long for a game where you play as Zelda, and what's that going to be like? Oh, she's got all these cool object copying powers. She's like a mage or like a magician or whatever they call it in the Zelda universe. And great, in the big action moments, you just turn into the other guy. And yeah, I'm so disappointed. Like, in Smash Brothers, the other game where you play as Zelda, she's just got all these crazy magic spells that she like drops on people. She's got like the power of the 3 goddesses who created Hyrule. And I'm not saying that because I want to sound like a huge like Zelda lore nerd, but it's like, this is the sort of like abilities that this character is able to use. And in this game, they just decided, oh no, let's just ignore all that. Let's just bring in Link to the rescue whenever that's convenient. So I think that's so disappointing.
Yeah, except, my counter to that is that I almost never use it. Do you use it?
No, because I forget about it. I mean, there are plenty of times,
yeah.
I mean, it feels like if there's like a boss fight or something, you're expected to use it then. So that's sort of like, oh, yeah. But then
I've done a couple of... Sorry, I'm going to step on your point, but I've done a couple of boss encounters like solely using echoes.
Okay.
So it can be done, at least to the point that I'm at in the game, without having to be the sword fighter.
Yeah, I think like there are a few cases where I like ran out of the energy that you need to use that, and then I was able to finish the fight using just the echoes. Right.
Which is exactly what I was going to say is the ticking clock on that power is so short. Unless you upgrade it, which takes a lot of time, I think. You got a longer time to be the sword fighter and to be in sword fighter mode. But when like its initial vanilla, level 1 is so short that it's not really practical for an extended battle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to, and you can re-energize it and refill through some machination. But yeah, I find that you're better off just summoning a bunch of bad guys who will throw spears and what's the thing that flies around and it has the spinny blades below it? I like that guy.
Oh, the pea hat.
Yes, the pea hat. Yeah, big fan of the pea hat.
Got a lot of really good classic Zelda enemies in this.
Yeah. And it has the thing from Breath of the Wild where you can sort of grab things in the environment with like a laser tether and like move them around to a place where they're most sort of convenient for you. And you can do that with the enemies that you summon as well. You can do it with enemies that you're fighting against sometimes, which is interesting. So yeah, I just get that blade spinning on the pea hat and you just grab him with the tether and just kind of grind him into your enemies and collect the spoils.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I see your point. I do feel like the sword fighter mode is a bit of a cop-out, but I also feel like it's so impractical and kind of poorly implemented that I don't even use it.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of that, and it's also just my sort of JRPG instinct kicking in where it's like so limited the amount you can use it initially, where I'm just like, oh, I'd better save this for like the last boss, I guess, and then I never use it, even though there are plenty of opportunities. Yeah, so I end up like just sort of psyching myself into using the echoes most of the time.
Yeah.
But also I'm just like, nah, I'm not using it on principle because I'm just like, Zelda doesn't need to, doesn't need to call Link for help all the time. This is her game.
Yeah. Yeah. I do like, I think that there's a lot of things to criticize from the old CDI games, but I think the thing that is sort of commonly referenced in that, because that's the first game where you can play as Zelda.
Mhm.
Is it's really just a reskin of Link. She has the same abilities and the same weapons and yada yada. So you're not really like playing as a different character with different moves or abilities. This is I mean, you approach this entire game in a very different way as Zelda, and she is kind of tasked with kind of outthinking her way through some of the scenarios that Link would just hack and slash his way through. So I like that. I think it feels different enough that I think it sort of does justice to the character in a way that is satisfying.
Yeah, I'm glad that it is not just, you're doing Link's moves, but with Zelda's sort of like skin over them. Because,
Right.
that would be really disappointing. But
Which is why Sword Fighter mode probably rubs you the wrong way.
yeah,
Because it is exactly that. It
Yeah,
is
you
it is
just
you
turn,
playing
like,
with, yeah.
Like you don't even go into like, they could have easily made it like just a more combat oriented moveset, which is not exactly Link's moveset. Like she throws fireballs around or something, or I forget what else she was doing in Smash Brothers. She had like a shield or a teleport or something.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, every time I remember, it's like, oh yeah, push this button to just transform into Link, turn it back into another game for a while. I feel like they could have been a little more creative.
Well, I think Nintendo found their way kind of around this with Princess Peach, in that in Showtime, every costume she puts on grants her some new set of abilities and new skills.
Yeah.
So that you don't end up with a train wreck of like 15 different abilities. You don't end up sort of like deviating too dramatically away from what is known to be kind of the canon of the character. So it really is just her putting on a costume that now allows her to fly, or to be a baker, or to whatever. I forget the other things that she did in that game, but that was kind of the cool workaround for granting Peach a series of interesting and constantly changing and upgrading abilities. I don't know that they've necessarily found anything more unique for Zelda. It's not like she suddenly puts on... I like that she's kind of in stealth mode. She puts on a cloak sometimes.
Yes, that's very good.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think that's kind of fun. But she does not yet, at least in the game that I'm playing, have at the point in which I'm at in the game, have a ton of other like new and unique abilities that she's sort of putting on like a hat.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Other than that, though,
yeah. I think it's a little sort of problematic for Nintendo that they have these kind of like these female characters that have not really done things in games before, who have sort of classically been the damsel.
Mm-hmm.
And did not have a way to kind of like defend or fight back or be interesting in a video gamey kind of way. So I mean, kudos to them, sort of like for rewriting history and cooking up ways to keep Peach and Zelda interesting and at the forefront of the games that they're in. But I don't know, maybe we could do more.
Yeah. God, there was this article on Polygon or Kotaku a few months ago about just like, they spoke to Eiji Aonuma about, like, why hasn't Zelda had her own game yet? And it was just, like, the most ridiculous sort of, like, bending over backwards, like, making excuses for why it wasn't possible or why it didn't make sense. And it always came down to sort of, like, them having to justify Link going away for some reason, which is, like, basically what happens in this game. So that didn't do any better. But it just seems ridiculous. Like, oh, yeah, well... why would Zelda be the main character of the game when we've got this other guy? And then even when all the stars aligned and they're like, okay, fine, she's here. But just in case, Link is still here, don't worry, everybody. It's just really disappointing to me. Yeah.
I think they forget just like, or they think anyways, that like people love Link. Like, we're here for Link.
Yes, why people do love Link. But, he's been in every Zelda game.
Right, yeah. I think that's the thing I sort of appreciate about Princess Peach Showtime, is that they had the confidence to really just center it around Peach. Like, I won't spoil anything, but you are very short on Mario in that game.
Mm-hmm. I assume Mario has to show up at some point.
Yeah. And it's not just a pure role reversal in that she's like, she must rescue Mario. There's like other things that she's trying to do. So it's not, again, it passes the Bechdel test in that she thinks about things other than the man in her life. It's kind of satisfying in that way to see her like, explore and just sort of like try on other things rather than just sort of being, the princess who everybody's madly in love with and tries to kidnap all the time.
Yeah. That's the other thing that you mentioned. I'm kind of annoyed that the whole thing is because you have to rescue Link. Like, she doesn't even really know who he is at the start of the game. It's just like, oh, why would I rescue that guy? Whatever. I'm just going to go do other stuff. I don't know.
The hero of Hyrule. Yeah.
He's just some guy in this one, right? I don't know. It feels like they played around with the timeline a bit. Yeah, it's true.
When you go to his village, people know who he is. So he's sort of the hero to them. But I don't think he's definitely not the celebrity that he is in Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah.
All of that notwithstanding, it's Echoes of Wisdom is super fun. Would totally recommend. Don't let me dissuade you with all of my gender politics.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's not spoiling my enjoyment of it. I'm just like, I'm just like sort of raising an eyebrow every once in a while.
Yeah, it's I have the voice of a lot of people on the internet going, "Why does everything have to be political?" I'm like, well, because everything's political. So yeah, it is easy to enjoy without the baggage of that. And if that is your preferred way of consuming it, go for it.
Yeah. Well, speaking of games that are not political in any way, I played one about the First World War.
Oh.
Which is Conscript. It's part of my Spooky Saturday horror month. This came out earlier this year. And what caught my attention about this game, it's been in development for a while, is it's like a top-down survival horror game. Like I said, set in World War I, which is, not a very common setting for games.
Yeah.
But
are you like the reanimated corpse of Archduke Ferdinand back for revenge?
That would be something. Well, so here's the thing, is that whenever I think of survival horror, I just assume that implies some sort of supernatural element, which is not really, I don't think that's accurate at all. I mean, that is sort of, I feel like there are probably more supernatural survival horror games than there are just, completely grounded survival horror games. But I saw that and I was like, okay, wait a minute. So is it spooky World War I? What's going on in this game? Are there zombies at some point? I don't know. What's the deal? Is it just World War I and they figured out how to make it scary? I mean, not that World War I isn't just scary in and of itself. But so anyway, I was very curious.
So this isn't like a Wolfenstein or a Hellboy kind of revisionist history thing where
no.
Well, it wouldn't be the Nazis, but the Nazis had vampires and things like that.
Yeah, well, so that's what I was determined to figure out.
Sure.
So I got in this game, and no, you're just playing as a French soldier, I believe, a few years into World War I, and it is you're just going around doing World War I soldier things. You're fighting in the trenches and ducking into bunkers when you start getting shelled, and scavenging for supplies and repairing barricades so soldiers don't jump into the trenches. And it's surprisingly grounded for what I assumed would only it inevitably had to just turn into a spooky ghost game at some point. So I was like, okay, that's cool. So, and just to put this out there, I have not played very far into this game. So as far as I know, maybe there are spooky ghosts later on. But my sort of weird experience with this game so far has been, I've basically just constantly been restarting it. So I've played the first part of the game, the first, the opening hours of the game, maybe 3 times at this point. And that's because, when I sit down to play a horror game, I feel like you get more out of the sort of horror, atmosphere and tension if you play it on a higher difficulty level, because you're generally more constrained for supplies, and encounters with enemies are more threatening. So that is just scarier as a player, but you don't want that. So I struggled a bit starting this up, considering whether I should play it on normal mode or maybe even bump it up 1 notch to a harder difficulty, because I was just looking at it, it's sort of this top-down perspective, it almost a Zelda-like perspective, except you are a sort of gritty-looking World War I soldier, and I was just how scary could this possibly be? Maybe I should bump it up. So I started playing like that, and yeah, you're actually pretty constrained in terms of how many resources you have. You have a very classic sort of survival horror limited inventory. You have to carry all your guns and ammunition and healing items separately. So, if you eventually you have to pick up like a key to unlock a further section of the map. Maybe you have to leave something behind. And then just the enemies are relentless. Like there are occasions where you'll be sort of minding your own business and suddenly there'll just be like a raid and tons of soldiers will jump into the trenches. And my first instinct was like, okay, well, I mean, it's like a war game. I'm a soldier. Obviously, I have to like shoot all of them or, smash them with my shovel. Very World War I thing to do. But then I quickly realized like, oh no, this is where the survival horror aspect comes in. You are supposed to like avoid a lot of these encounters. And in fact, it gives you a lot of opportunities to either like lose them by like evading them in the trenches, or sometimes there's a little like sort of like hole in the wall you can duck into and wait for the enemies to walk by. But yeah, it's definitely not like a military shooter by any means. You're just sort of like really limited on ammo and healing items, and it's probably in your best interest to avoid encounters.
Oh, interesting.
So it actually becomes like, I don't know if I would call it a horror game, but it's very tense in the way that survival horror games have been, because you just don't have a lot of great ways to deal with enemies. So they can potentially overwhelm you all the time.
Right. You're not like surviving werewolves and shit like that, but you're surviving, the things that happen in war.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so really unexpected. And who knows, like maybe there's just werewolves later on. I haven't run into them yet. But up to this point, it just has been like a very familiar sort of survival horror experience. But with that in mind, I keep thinking like, oh man, this is maybe a little more demanding than I thought. Maybe I'll bump it down down a notch. So I like restarted it on an easier difficulty, having a little better idea of what to do. So that also helped. And then just played through the intro again. And I forget why. So I think I was like just trying to read up a little bit on like sort of what to expect, like maybe trying to figure out if there are spookier elements later on. And then based on everybody's impressions on like the Steam forums from playing the later areas, everybody's just complaining more about like how few supplies they have and how much they have to like backtrack around the map to pick up extra resources. And I thought, well, I don't know if I want to deal with that. I'm just going to bump it down again. So just like play it on story mode difficulty, essentially.
And you could only change the difficulty before starting the game?
As far as I can tell, yeah. Maybe I'm just an idiot. And I was like, oh, it was in the options menu all along. But no, I've just been restarting my game.
I appreciate a video game that tells you can change this later.
Yeah. I feel like games are a lot better about that lately. This one, it gives you a lot of options that you can change. And then I think it might actually say, like, you will not be able to adjust this once you get started. So that was maybe a tip off. But besides the fact that I've just been replaying it over and over again, it's still very interesting. It's still quite like it's a unique setting. There's sort of like this question of whether you and your brother will survive the war and how things are going to play out. But just a really kind of different take on survival horror from stuff I played recently.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily like have ever acknowledged that like the expectation that I have in my brain for what a survival horror game is going to be is well, and thinking in horror in general is typically going to be supernatural based, right? It's going to be a ghost or a monster or a zombie or an alien or something like that haunting you or chasing you in some way. No, I do think that. I think that in general, when I say, it's a survival horror game, I expect there to be some haunted supernatural thing happening.
Yeah, like something's haunted. I was trying to think, like, have I played any horror games that are not supernatural? And I couldn't really think of any. It's either like supernatural or a sci-fi.
Have you played a survival game? Have I ever played a survival game that is not supernatural? The only thing I can think of in my brain is that game Lost in Blue. Have you ever played that?
Oh, no, that's the one where you're on an island.
It's like a shipwreck survival thing.
Yeah.
And like if you don't eat fast enough, you die. If you don't build a fire, you freeze to death. And at no point are there like monsters or zombies or anything like that. But I mean, that's survival, right? That's the definition of survival. And despite that, I still sort of expect these games to be spooky or horrific from some paranormal thing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe just like by nature of it being a video game designers can't resist putting like, oh yeah, let's just add a zombie because why not?
Right. And then the vampires come.
Yeah. I was thinking like, it's like, oh, Valheim. Been back into Valheim lately. But no, there's just a bunch of like mystical Viking stuff going on in that game, so I don't know why I would have thought about that. But yeah, I mean, I also consider just like sort of open world survival a very different type of survival than like survival horror. I would expect, like, I have less of an expectation that like an open world survival game would have supernatural elements in it, though.
Right.
Although they still tend to. Like, I can't think of one that, like, maybe Rust or something. I don't know how crazy that gets. But yeah, I've been like racking my brain trying to think of like scary games that I've played that are not also just like full of ghosts or vampires. And no, that seems to be sort of the accepted sort of genre.
Right. Wasn't there an Amnesia game that was World War One? The Bunker.
Was that? The Amnesia games are always supernatural, aren't they?
Right, exactly, yeah. So, hold on, let me Google it. The game follows a French soldier who is trapped in a bunker during World War One with a monster and must find a way to escape.
With a monster.
Yeah. So there you go, DJ. If you need more monsters in your spooky survival game, play Amnesia the Bunker.
I am not playing an Amnesia game. Are you kidding me?
No. So for you in Conscript, is this a plus or a minus? Does it make the game more interesting or less interesting to you?
Well, the fact that there are no ghosts in it so far that we know of.
Right.
So much more interesting. I mean, less interesting in that ghosts are very interesting, but it's like, oh, they did it. They made a survival horror game with no monsters, just, enemy soldiers trying to murder you. And rats. Right. There are some rats in it.
Gross.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're just in trenches all the time. So yeah, I was like, I wasn't sure if they would pull it off. And I also am openly acknowledging that I could be totally wrong. Maybe there are ghosts in the second half, but
maybe
so far,
they didn't.
Yeah, maybe they didn't. Maybe yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Based on a quick Google, no supernatural elements in Conscript.
Yeah, I don't think there are. I was almost going to post on the forum, like, are there ghosts in this? When are the ghosts going to show up? But no, so I'm kind of impressed that they just stuck to it.
I like that, though, when a game sort of like as a gamer, you bring a certain baggage and a certain expectation to a video game.
Yeah.
And I dig it when they don't necessarily deliver on that, but instead pursue some other interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think it's easy and probably far more likely to just sort of be disappointing. But to not be the thing I'm expecting because of the way that it was marketed or just because of what I bring to video games, to not like steer into that kind of easy conclusion is awesome for me as a gamer. It has to be kind of an interesting challenge as a developer.
Yeah. And you know what my favorite spooky ghost game is Gone Home.
Oh, yeah. Totally. That's a great reference. Yeah, because you spend most of that game. I spent most of the first time playing that game thinking it was something seriously sinister happening.
Yeah. Not to, give away anything that happens in that game, but that was another one of the few instances I can think of where a game has really just set it up as one thing and it's another thing. Yeah.
I think Firewatch did that really well too, because I kept waiting for Firewatch to be something completely different.
Really? Interesting.
Because I think there are a lot of threads in that game that you could go down where it's sort of like, oh, it's like a Sasquatch, or it's aliens, or it's some other like video gamey thing. And it's really just kind of cute and tender and nice and a little bit of a mystery, but not one of those kinds of mysteries.
I think, I could see that. I feel like what that end, like sort of like the way that unfolded was very unsatisfying to me. Oh, yeah. It was a fun game, but like sometimes the story just doesn't land.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. I think it did for me. It did with Firewatch, but interesting.
But anyway, Conscript.
Yeah.
You're short on World War I games to play. Yeah, pretty cool.
Neat. Yeah, this looks cool. This was not at all what I was expecting when you said. Again, my gamer baggage is that I expect every war game to look like Call of Duty.
Oh yeah, it is very, very much not Call of Duty.
Yeah, so looking at screenshots of this, I'm like, ooh, that is not. I would not have summoned that visual at all. So that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, want to wrap this thing up?
I think that's it. Yeah. I gotta go summon some more tables.
Nice. If you need... Oh, do I have time for that? I don't. I'm gonna... Maybe a few minutes.
Wow, what do you have time for?
What do I have time for? I don't like just a few minutes of Zelda before I go to bed.
Oh, I see. I thought you were just like going to go on some completely random tangent.
Oh, no. Do I have time to play Echoes of Wisdom before I go to nights?
Oh, yeah. There's always time for a little Zelda.
Sleep when you're dead. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. You will find information there about Extra Life, which is coming up on November 2nd. So definitely make sure you point your browser in that direction as well. So it's VGHangover.com/extra life.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Yeah. We would love for you to hang out with us on Discord. You can chat about video games and other fun stuff. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com as well. And it always helps us immensely when you subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcasting app of choice. Maybe hook us up with a referral to one of your friends.
Yeah. Help us out a lot. Get the word out and bring in new listeners. So we really appreciate that.
Definitely.
Who else do we appreciate? We appreciate RJ Lake for our intro and outro music this week. If you'd like to hear more of his work, you can go to spellmynamewithabang.bandcamp.com. Get his entire discography, including soundtracks to games like El Paso Elsewhere, the Dog Airport Alien game, and more.
Yeah.
Spellmynamewithabang.com.
Bandcamp.com.
Oh, why would you pick that as your Bandcamp link? Whatever. You can still go there.
It's a mouthful. Definitely. We'll be back soon. We'll be back next Monday night streaming Lorelei and the Laser Eyes, and then we'll be back in 2 weeks with our Extra Life pregame thing.
Yeah. Ooh, I forgot to mention Spooky Saturday.
Yeah.
Spooky games every weekend. Go to VGHangover.com to learn more. That's it. That's
nice.
A quick pitch.
Yeah. We buried the lead on that.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good week. Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.